Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's public forum being held in the Council chambers for this Monday, 12th of September 2022. This public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. Item 2, conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor King. We have one conflict of interest declaration received for the public forum from Councillor Edwards, a non-pecuniary less than significant conflict of interest. Councillor Edwards' conflict of interest relates to a previous professional dealings with the author of the Heritage Impact Statement through her work with the New South Wales State Government. It relates to item 3 of the public forum and also later, of course, item CM 13.1 in the council meeting. Councillor Edwards' action she intends to take is to declare a conflict and remain in the chamber. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So our first guest speaker. So Speaker Lee Tornquist, in relation to item 13.1, which is the development application 10.2021.38929, the 6-storey residential apartment building at 557 Thurgoona Street, Albury, speaking not in support of Council's preferred recommendation. Lee, welcome.
Well, and timer. Good evening, councillors, council staff, and ladies and gentlemen of the gallery. My name is Lee Tornquist and I reside at 557 Dyke Street. It's a beautiful part of Albury and I honestly believe that this development will more than likely destroy it. So I just wanted to recap on some of the points I made last time I was here and then possibly make some more. One thing I do want to bring attention to is that everyone here is wearing a red shirt, and my apologies for my red shirt, it's somewhat tatty. And as you can see here, we have quite a collection of people here that are also opposed to this development. So I guess really one of the largest sticking point is the height of the building. At 6 stories, it does not fit in at all with the surrounding area or the surrounding buildings. And I fear that at such great height, it will cause a lack of privacy for the people who are directly adjacent and around it. Personally, I won't be affected too much, but I do fear very sadly for the people who live right next door to it. Just to touch on a separate note, years ago, a relative of mine built a 2nd story on their house in South Australia, and the Port Adelaide City Council specified that they could not have any clear glazing so that they could not look out and it did not destroy the privacy of other people. Is it possible that maybe that might be a consideration for this development should it be approved? Shading, as I mentioned last time, with great height comes great shading. And if you look at the shade diagram that has been provided by the developer, directly across the road, the Housing Commission housing is badly affected by the shading in the winter period, which means these people will have to heat their houses more, and they're probably least likely to be able to afford to do that, as well as adding to global warming, which we're all told that we must curb. Along with that shading, as you're well aware, comes rotted vegetable material. Now, the area is so cherished because it has so many lovely trees. And we know in the wintertime, trees drop leaves. The shading will stop those leaves from drying out, blowing away. They will turn into a vegetative rotting hazard, and slips and falls will be obviously forthcoming. Not environmentally friendly. As I said before, we are told to think about the environment every day and every week. and multi-high-rise buildings are not environmentally friendly. If you look at just the fact that you've got to pressurize the water, and I Googled it before I came here tonight, you require several pumps at various locations to pressurize the water so that there is sufficient water pressure for the people at the top, but not excessive water pressure at the bottom. So these pumps are going to have to be running night and day. When everyone wants to turn on or have a shower, you're going to have these pumps running. Going to be more energy used, more global warming. Traffic flow. In the house that I live in, I have a beautiful view of the intersection of Pemberton and Thurgoona Street. And I think I've mentioned this before to the councillors and the members of the gallery. Even on a quiet night, the traffic can be quite congested. Looking at the design of the in and out flows of this building, exiting and entering off Thurgoona Street, to be honest with you, the only way I can see that it's going to work for the people wanting to come out of the building or go into the building, you're going to have to put a roundabout in. Now imagine the cost to the council of doing that. The size of the block. It is a 1,326 square metre block. That is approximately 2 standard house blocks. I drove around it today on my way down here. It's a tiny block. Consider this, other six-story buildings in the area, the Hamilton, for example, the Zorna building and the Gardens building, all about the same height, all on much larger blocks. The block is simply too small to support a 6-story building. Graffiti. Went down to the Hamilton on Sunday, had a look. Yeah, it's an interesting building. Hasn't really added much to the surrounding area. In fact, one of the bottom offices is still untenanted. And I noticed one of the huge sheer walls that faces ARB Albury already has graffiti on it. Now, this building here has more exposed walls than the Hamilton. It's basically going to be a red flag for every graffiti artist around to come and paint something on the side of it. Who knows, they might even paint some paddle wheels on it.
Thank you, Lee. We do have a few speakers tonight, so that is your 5 minutes. If I could, thank you very much for your time.
Not a problem.
Any question in relation to Mr. Tornquist? Thank you.
Very good.
Sorry, Councillor Glacken, apologies.
That's all right. Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, please. Can I ask 3 questions? And I'm happy to ask them all at once and perhaps I can be covered off altogether. So our speaker has made reference to water pumps and having to pump water to the top, shadowing being over across Pemberton Street. Can we confirm how long that would be at its maximum in the maximum shadow period, which would be, of course, winter? And there was also a question raised about having to have a roundabout put in. Can those 3 be dealt with by the staff either immediately or perhaps during the debate later? Thank you.
Perhaps during the debate is the advice from
happy.
Mr. CEO?
Yep, happy with that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you for your time, Mayor and councillors, and of course, the members of the gallery.
Thank you. Our next guest speakers are coming up together. I understand that is Brad Wunton and Simon Pedler. It is in relation to the same development application, does not support council's preferred recommendation. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councillors, council staff and residents, and thank you for the opportunity to address you again about this development. It's actually my second time presenting to council. Last time was the community forum, so I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed today. I live on Carrington Street, as I said last time, very close to the proposed development. And I spoke at the community forum in June, so I'll keep this as brief as possible. There are 4 main points I would like you to consider before voting tonight. 1, the development in its original and revised form does not comply with the Albury Development Control Plan 2010, in particular Part 10, Division F, Clause 4. This section of the DCP has a guideline of nil for the maximum number of stories. True, it does not state a maximum number of stories in the DCP for this residential area. However, the DCP guideline states that, quote, number of stories is compatible with the streetscape and the character of the locality. Number of stories reasonably maintains acceptable relationship with adjoining development in terms of bulk and scale and resident amenity. This 6-story development is not compatible with the streetscape and the character of the locality. 6 stories does not reasonably maintain an acceptable relationship with adjoining development in terms of bulk and scale. 6 stories does not reasonably maintain an acceptable relationship with adjoining development in terms of resident amenity. The developer states that this performance criteria is satisfactory. This development, either in its original or revised form, is clearly not satisfactory. This development is a variation from the DCP guidelines. This has not been correctly reported, possibly because such a variation would be fatal to the application. On these grounds alone, this development should not be approved by council. My second point is that this development application and subsequent submissions to council, I believe, has been misleading. In response to the community concerns about the building height and compatibility with the streetscape character, in a letter to council on the 29th of June this year, the developer stated, the primary impediment to a basement construction is that the land has been remediated and capped to a shallow depth that does not enable significant excavation. Construction of a basement would require the seal to be broken and further remediation works carried out on the site. The developer goes on to state that consideration has been given to a partial basement construction. As with the comments above, the depth of the capped remediation level does not facilitate adequate depth to provide a partial basement. End of quotation. However, on page 390 of the council agenda papers, of which there are about 750 pages, a report by Coffey Geotechnical Engineers concludes that, and quote, the constituents of potential concern concentrations currently identified in soil and groundwater, as presented in this report, are not considered to be present at unacceptable inhalation health risks. On-site residential occupants in a slab-on-ground dwelling or within a single-level underground basement, on-site commercial workers in a slab-on-ground building or within a single-level underground basement, on-site construction workers within a basement construction excavation. What this means is that there is no health risk to excavating to one level below the soil surface to put in an underground basement, contradictory to the letter provided to council in June. The community was only provided with the Coffey Geotechnical report on Thursday last week. So we haven't had a lot of time to go through that report plus the other submissions made to council. Clearly, the developer could reduce the height of this building and improve compatibility with the streetscape by excavating a single level underground for the car park. Based on the misleading statements to council, this development should not be approved in its current form. My third point is if you approve this development tonight, you will set a precedent for 6-story buildings in residential areas of Albury. Do we really want 6-story buildings throughout residential areas of Albury? In the CBD, maybe. However, we do not want 6-story buildings scattered throughout residential areas. Such high buildings will block views of this beautiful city, the historical church spires, Monument Hill, and the historic buildings on Dean Street. They will cause overshadowing of surrounding parks and streets, limiting light into people's homes and gardens throughout the day, especially in winter. They will reduce privacy of nearby residents, especially those living close by. I urge you to reject this development application and not set a precedent in Albury. My fourth and final point is since the community forum in June, an online petition opposing this development was created. As of today, we've had over 100 people sign this online petition. Clearly, a large proportion of the community oppose this development. Based on community sentiment, it should not be approved by council. Thank you once again for your time tonight, councillors, and good evening.
Thank you.
get going? Questions?
Oh, right.
Keep
So
it.
one
Want to do-
speaker and
I don't mind. Do you want to take
any,
questions for Brad or
any
do you want me to
questions?
share mine?
Thank you.
Right. Good evening, councillors and everybody here tonight at the forum. I'm speaking on behalf of 20 residents who sought professional town planning advice prior to the previous forum in June. I've been asked to speak on their behalf because they're probably more nervous than I am about speaking in this sort of format. But I'm just going to make 4 points tonight, if I may. I'll try and keep this as brief as possible because I overstayed my welcome last time. But my first point is we are gravely concerned about the precedence that this project will set for the R1 residential zone in Albury, which is most of Albury. If this project is approved, that could open the floodgates for many 6-storey apartment buildings throughout Albury in any location due to the fact that there's no height control. Secondly, the group is concerned that the car park is not placed in a basement and out of sight. As Brad has elaborated on, it is feasible to have the basement in the car park. The Coffee's report that's part of the submission does confirm that it is safe to go into one level. And as they've illustrated on the 403rd page of their report, the old fuel tanks, for instance, were about the same height as what the basement would be. So any leaching of chemicals would be below the basement because they're at about the same height as what a basement would be. And that's standard practice in the industry. This would also have the added benefit if the car park was lowered into the ground, the building would be effectively 5 stories out of the ground rather than 6, thereby effectively lowering the building, and the applicant still has his own 6-storey building. So it has an added bonus. A third bonus of that concept would be that the building would be set back. So rather than having balconies at level 1, my neighbours would think there was a great benefit that those balconies would then be at ground level, and therefore these apartments would have the appearance of having front yards and keeping in character with the neighbouring buildings of the neighbourhood that have a true front yard, so to speak, rather than an elevated balcony above a car park. Thirdly, and right to our initial point, we still don't believe and aren't convinced that this design, although it's been tweaked around the edges a couple of % to try and comply with SEP 65, the state environmental planning policy for quality design of apartment buildings, we still don't believe, even from our original objection when it was 7 stories, even though it's now 6, it still far exceeds the character of the area in bulk and scale. And we don't believe the minor changes that have occurred really have achieved that in any way. And lastly, there's a 6-metre setback requirement. And I talked about setbacks at length last time. You'll see, if we just go back 1 page, please, Jen. As highlighted in yellow there, the client has changed their design and produced a setback at ground level and produced 4 visitors car parks and a setback for part of the Pemberton Street facade. But I consider this, and our group considers this, a bit of a Clayton setback, because if you go to the next floor plan, please, Jen, you'll find that the setback disappears. So yes, they've achieved a setback at ground level only, but I don't think the DCP talks about achieving it at ground level only. It's talking about a building setback. So I challenge that and speak on behalf of my group. And if this is the case, and if this is acceptable, does this mean that everybody can have a setback in their front yard and then go and build a lounge room or bedroom sticking out to the street and no front yards ever exist anymore? To me, it doesn't make sense and it is confusing. So we're disappointed basically that the applicant hasn't approached any of us that spoke at the forum. There's been no concerns raised with us or any attempt to communicate with any of the speakers in the last forum. And we think that if the application is not going to be rejected tonight, that a motion should be to be raised to defer the vote on this amendment to give us time to perhaps find a compromise, because we're willing to, well, everyone's willing for something to happen. We just don't believe it should be of this scale because of the reasons I've set out and what Brad's mentioned earlier. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, councillors? Thank you very much for your presentations, Mr. Woodton and Mr. Pedlar. Next up, I do believe they're coming together as well. We have David Hunter from Habitat Planning, also in relation to that development application, and Travis Barker, Habitat Planning, Albury, in relation also to that development application. They are speaking in support of council's preferred recommendation. Gentlemen.
Good evening. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak on behalf of our proposal at 557 Laguna Street, Albury. For those who don't know me, my name is Travis Barker, and beside me, David Hunter. from Habitat Planning. I'm a local builder and a developer and have been involved in Albury-Wodonga for the last 36 years. Our company, Barker Group, was founded here in Albury. We employ local people. We're passionate when it comes to development and construction. We want to see Albury expand and be a leading regional city. 557 Laguna Street is a great example of how the city can move forward into the future. Projects like this, designed and constructed by locals, are not only driven by company balance sheets. A lot of people involved in projects like this gain personal satisfaction from just being a member of the community and a member of the team involved. I'd like to start out with some history around the project and offer my overview of the process. The officer's report summarises the development application, but I'd like to go back and reflect on how we made the decision to submit the development application for this site. We're the developers and the builders for the Hamilton project in Albury, commercial residential development on the corner of David and Hume Street in Albury. Most of you would know that property and be aware of that project. The Hamilton, like this proposal, also received submissions and went through the same process that we're conducting here tonight. I think it's relevant to reflect on this project and what this site originally was. This site was a long time car park, bitumen coated with a fast food operation sitting on it. We transformed that site into a high quality, sought after residential and commercial building. The community has embraced this project and it's been had an overwhelming success. On the back of this project, we're looking for another site to duplicate that model on the back of demand. We looked at a number of sites in and around Albury and in and around central Albury. We found 557 Laguna Street. This site met the requirements for our targeted user. The site's surrounded by 3 street frontages. It has minimal overshadowing and overlooking because of the wide streets, the large roundabout. There is no heritage overlay on this site. There is no height restriction. The site is only 2 blocks from Dean Street, basically central. This is a livable residential area, as it's been pointed out, and a wide nature strips, tree-lined streets. The site is very prominent and deserves to have a prominent building placed on it. The street is fully serviced. Good water pressure, sewer, gas, electricity is all available. The site basically suits this proposal. With this in mind, we submitted the DA to council. We made a number of amendments, and this is all covered in a 700+ page report that's tabled here tonight. We acknowledge the recommendation from council planners and the teams in the report that's here tonight. To recap on the positivity around the proposed development that is up for recommendation tonight, it offers a wide range of housing options for all of the community. The site has on-site parking for all the apartments, plus the visitors, plus disabled car parking. The site is secure and safe living. We're not living on the ground floor. People can go up and be safe. It offers a change to the streetscape. An old service station site. It's been vacant for a long time. And the weeds are growing on it, and we're going to turn that into a vibrant community living apartment complex. Development offers the next step for empty nesters, retirees within the community. This then opens the door for younger families to take the older homes, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 bedroom homes that are only one occupier in there at the moment, and they can come in and live in central Albury and utilise that space. The building design captures all of the STEP 65 apartment design guidelines and energy efficiency. The building design is facilitated for disabled. There's no steps, wider doorways, lift access. There's not a lot of options for disabled people living in and around Albury in the older style homes. I'll pinch a bit of David's time. Developments like this are beneficial to the environment. For example, the running costs, if we talk about pumps, etc., and essential services are all covered by a large solar system on the roof. The walkability is a desirable place to live because owners and tenants become a driverless society. They also increase interactive amongst the people in the CBD, the cafes, the restaurants and the stores as they walk to and from work from these areas. The development meets the planning requirements. In conclusion, once again, we would like to acknowledge the recommendation from the planning staff. Council planning and engineering is a very large division within these walls, along with all the other staff around them. The team members have a wide range of experience and knowledge around all aspects of planning. Decisions like this one that we made here tonight are not made lightly, as we all know. There's a lot of work, time, financial input from all parties, from the applicant to council to come to this conclusion. I stand here tonight, I believe this is a great opportunity for councillors to set a positive belief into the community that a good, well-planned, appropriate development can happen here in Albury.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. We might let Mr. Hunter,
I'll finish off with 3 lines. I'll finish with 3 lines, please, if I could, Mayor.
as long as Mr. Hunter doesn't mind having a reduced
No,
time,
he can cut less.
just to
no
wrap up,
doubt.
please.
No doubt others are following and watching this space, and hopefully we can welcome them with open arms to development opportunities in Albury. We want to see Albury be a leader amongst regional towns. We want to support education, industry, manufacturing, growth, jobs, cultural environment. Development like this one, noted above, support all of this, allowing the community to move forward with the times, create a vibrant city for people to live, work and play in. We believe the proposal presented tonight just simply works and should be recommended for approval.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Mr. Hunter, we've got about 3 minutes for your presentation, unfortunately.
No, that's fine. I don't have a lot to add. I probably had my say on the community forum. So, I just wanted to back up what Travis has already said. Obviously, we're supportive of the council planning staff and the recommendations. We've obviously been made aware of the draft conditions and reviewed those and fully agree with the conditions that have been imposed. Obviously, as we've talked about and has been discussed by some of the other speakers, when we were here in June for the community forum, we'd obviously made some changes, most notably being the reduction of 1 story. Since then, there's been some more changes, which I won't go through, but they're all summarised in the report. They're not in themselves significant, but in terms of the total development, the things around lowering the ground level street wall, adding the setbacks, moving the car parking out, we believe has a reasonable impact on the appearance of that building, and is responding particularly to some of the context and the character concerns that were raised. We acknowledge the building is of a greater height than the adjoining properties, but that itself does not necessarily mean that it's incompatible or out of context. The architects have worked with heritage advisors and have tried to develop a high quality design that references the character of Forest Hill and works those features into the design. The design's also been refined to fit within the design guidelines and the development controls. So overall, our view is the proposal is acceptable and it is appropriate for the area. And over the course of the assessment, the developers made further revisions to try and respond to those concerns and respond to the identified character of the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cameron?
Thank you. If I heard correctly, you said that the planners had made an effort to make sure the development was in character with the rest of Forest Hill and the general surrounding area.
Yep.
Can you articulate in what way? What features of this building are in tune with the community and the surrounds?
In relation to the Art Deco style, the features of the building, utilising the curves and some of the representative features that have been identified in those areas.
So the curves.
Yep, the building design.
Anything else? Or
It was in the heritage report. There was a reference in that, and it's quite detailed. It's within the
I know.
report. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? In that case, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And that concludes tonight's public forum. Thank you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's council meeting being held for this Monday, the 12th of September. We will open with the opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respects to the elders, past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. On behalf of the community of Albury, we also acknowledge the life and service of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and extend our condolences to His Majesty the King, Charles III, King of Australia, and to Her Majesty's family and friends. Please join us in a minute of silence to reflect on her contribution and lifetime of public duty to the Crown, the Commonwealth, and to millions of people from across the world. Thank you, everyone. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Item 3, conflict of interest declarations received by the chair and disclosure of political donations. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor King. A reference to the earlier conflict of interest declaration from Councillor Edwards, a non-pecuniary less than significant conflict of interest relating to item 13.1, the development application 557 Thaguna Street. Councillor Edwards' conflict of interest is a previous professional dealing with the author of the Heritage Impact Statement through Councillor Edwards' work in the New South Wales State Government. The action to be taken is to declare the conflict and remain in the chamber. Thank you, Mayor King. And disclosure of political donations. Thank you. The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, section 10.4 requires that a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application is to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of the council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on the council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993 Section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at the meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contributions plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 and Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Item 4.1, apologies. There are no apologies for the meeting. Item 4.2, attendance by councillors at meeting by audio visual link. We are all present. Item 5, mayoral minute. There is no mayoral minute. CM6, action plans. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second Councillor Thurley's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, just a short while ago, along with yourself and the Deputy Mayor and a number of members of staff, we attended the opening of the data centre, Edge Data Centre at in the airport precinct. And I just wanted to note that in the CEO's address to us that day, he specifically, and this was a $7.1 million investment in Albury, and he specifically mentioned Tracy Squire, who enthusiastically spoke to him when he first mentioned this concept. And I think we should recognise that that sort of enthusiasm and outreach from our staff has really been part of this development, and getting a $7.1 million investment is a big, big plus. So I wanted that to be recorded.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Any other speakers in relation to this? In that case, Councillor Thurley, happy for us to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM7, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. Item 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 22nd of August, 2022 at 6 p.m. Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 22nd of August, 2022 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Happy to second that motion.
Councillor Bettridge, given it's procedural, I'm
Procedural,
happy
yes.
to put the motion.
Yes, thank you.
Councillors, I'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM8, reports from community forums. There are none. CM9, notices of motion or notices of rescission. There are none. CM10, presentations and deputations. There are none. CM11, reports or minutes of committees and working parties. CM11.1, minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Monday, the 8th of August, 2022. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council receives notes and accepts the minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 8th of August, 2022.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Once again, just a brief note that we have a youth council member on our sustainability committee, and she presented a report to council noting a youth survey with 850 participants. So they're a very active group and they contribute significantly to our sustainability committee.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Any other councillors wish to speak on the motion at all? Councillor Thurley, happy to put the motion? I'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Item 11.2, minutes of the local traffic committee meeting held on Thursday, the 11th of August of 2022. Councillor Glucken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the local traffic committee meeting held on Thursday, 11 August 2022. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder, councillors? Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Happy to put the motion in that case. If there's no speakers for or against. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Minutes 11.3 is the item. Minutes of the Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 17th of August. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. And through you, I'd like to move that the council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting, which was held on Wednesday, the 17th of August, 2022.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. Happy to second that motion.
Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor King.
Councillors, any other speakers for or against? In that case, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM12, documents for sealing. There are none. CM13, officers' reports for consideration. CM 13.1, development application 10.2021.38929.1, six-storey residential apartment building, 557 Thaguna Street, Albury. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives the contents of this report and B, grants consent to development application 10.2021.38929. 1.1, I do apologise, being a six-storey 22-unit residential flat building situated at 557 Thaguna Street, Albury, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included in attachment 5 to this report. Thank you.
Councillor Bettridge.
Through you, Mayor King, happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bettridge. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to open debate?
I would love to open debate. However, I'm wondering if the staff might be able to answer some of the questions first that were raised in the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the questions, and for you, Mayor King. So the three questions I'd noted down were one around water pressure usage. Prior to the development getting formal approval to construct, I'll need to do a full hydraulics design for the building that will consider what is needed in regards to water pressure, which isn't obviously just for the internal usage, also includes fire hydrants and a variety of other components. And obviously, as indicated by the applicant, there is the ability to offset some of those usages through the solar panels identified on site. In regards to overshadowing, the shadowing diagrams which were provided with the port, initially had 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock considerations for the winter solstice, which is when the shadows are longest. So indicated at 9 o'clock there was shadowing over the developments to the south, but by 12 o'clock that had cleared to be pretty much in location with the roundabout. So further analysis undertaken by staff as part of our assessment indicated that the shadowing would clear the properties to the south around 10 o'clock to 10:30 in that respect, which is less than the 3 hours it provides more than the 3 hours of solar access required under the DCP in that respect. In regards to roundabout proposed or required for the driveway entrance, our traffic engineering and transport team have considered that they have not required any roundabout or similar measure as part of this development.
Thank you. Did you wish now, Councillor Glacken, to open debate?
Thank
We'll speak to the motion. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm supporting the staff in the recommendation to be used as a motion tonight. And there are a number of reasons as to why I am supporting this. It is indeed in the second block from Dean Street, and in essence is in a central part of the Albury CBD or central part of Albury. It's a corner block, and to the east and south there are main roads. To the north there is a lane. The shadowing is less than the maximum permissible. So there are significant numbers of daylight hours even at the winter solstice period, which is the longest, the shortest day of the year and the heaviest shadowing. And I believe that it is somewhat in keeping with the buildings in close proximity on three sides. Whether or not I like the style of this building is irrelevant. In essence, it is about whether or not I believe this building meets or doesn't meet planning requirements of Albury. And my reading is that whilst there is some variation, this building largely meets the requirements that we have in Albury. I believe that the design has been softened and a number of aspects have been modified over the time since the developer first designed this building. They've reduced it in height, they've changed the shape, they've changed the footprint, and they've changed the height of walls, as well as a number of other aspects as well. I'm conscious of the fact that this is a brownfield site, and as a city, we have taken some steps to encourage inner city redevelopment or development. We have encouraged inner city housing and an increase in housing availability. This development allows for a number of buildings on one site. Whilst one speaker said that it's not environmentally friendly, I believe that such a building is actually environmentally friendly because we're taking up less of a footprint, or this building would be taking up less of a footprint and providing more residences. It is in keeping with an aim that Albury City has, and that is to increase the vibrancy of our inner city area. I believe that we should be supporting this development tonight, and I do believe that the developer has taken a number of steps to better make this building fit the requirements and the desires of the people who had made comment originally not supporting the development. So I do support this development tonight, and I encourage other councillors to consider the advantages that we will gain as a city with this development and other developments like this in such proximity to our central area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Before we go to a few other speakers, there is a question. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wonder if through you to the most appropriate member of staff, much has been made of and I must admit some of it in the media, about the alleged resemblance to an ocean liner or a vessel of some kind. And also tonight we've heard that the curvature should be considered to be in line with Art Deco. What are the hallmarks, if the planning staff are able to elucidate me, what are the hallmarks of Art Deco architecture?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. There are a variety of hallmarks of Art Deco, one of them obviously generally being the period during which they were designed and constructed. Another is that there are a variety of styles. If you look at Forest Hill Avenue themselves, there are a variety of styles that can be considered to be Art Deco. A couple of the key features are, yes, they did involve a lot more curvature in their design than pure rectangular and squared designs. Another thing was around decorative elements, especially around the parapets and up on the higher areas. There's been two of the key defining features of Art Deco. In regards to the Forest Hill area, there are a number of Art Deco buildings there that do encompass a variety of styles. The ocean liner style, while it's a technical architectural term, it is noted in the heritage assessment of the Forest Hill area as being one of the styles that is located in there. But there are other Art Deco styles in the area that are also identified and located within the Forest Hill Conservation Area and a heritage item.
Supplementary.
Follow up.
It is my understanding, and I'm not expert in these matters, which is why I'm asking you, that the New Albury Hotel is the premier example of Art Deco design in Albury, that building. And what I'm struggling to come to terms with is how this proposed development can be considered to contain hallmarks of Art Deco architecture.
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. As indicated, there are a variety. Yes, Albury, the new Albury building is an Art Deco building. There also is the National Bank and a few other number of buildings around Albury that also bear hallmarks of Art Deco, but don't have curvature elements to it. So I guess my response to Councillor Cameron for you, Mayor King, is there are a variety of elements that can constitute Art Deco style. This doesn't propose to be an Art Deco building. What it proposes to do is take its cues from some of the Art Deco buildings that are located in the area. So one of those cues they have taken is the curvature.
It's a bit Art Deco.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Christie. Speaker against, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I speak against this motion. Part A, of course, I accept we receive the contents of the report, but I would vote against granting consent. And therefore I foreshadow that if this motion fails, I will move an alternative motion. I'll be brief now because I will argue if this motion fails, but frankly, the report itself says something like, the proposal's built form responds to the corner site's unique locational attributes, allowing it to break from the surrounding heritage character and context to create a prominent corner landmark. So there is no pretense that it is trying to fit in at all. It says quite clearly that it will break from the character and context. And that, to me, the bulk and scale, there are issues with SEP 65 and also with our own DCP. And to me, the departures are significant enough that we should not grant consent to this development. And in response to one of our speakers, I would have to say that councillors don't make decisions lightly either. These are some of the most difficult decisions we make. Well, they certainly are for me. Spend a lot of time reading numerous pages of documents here. So I'll leave it at that. But as I said, I've foreshadowed an alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Betteridge. Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I'm speaking for the motion to endorse the development application for 557 Thurgoona Street. The applicant has made considerable amendments to meet community concerns and has resubmitted with new amendments. The block of land has been unresolved for an extensive period of time, and this development is built site specific. We're facing a housing crisis, and this is the future of a growing and viable community. As Albury has continued to sprawl, the address of this proposed building is effectively now considered by the greater community as Central Albury, and this is city living. I trust the recommendations and resolutions to endorse the development application of 577 Thurgoona Street from the Albury City Council planning and engineering experts that have extensive experience in development controls and planning. We have a local builder who is keeping local development local, and there are no development parameters that inhibit me from endorsing this development application as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Speaker 4, Councillor Betteridge.
Thank you, through Mayor King. I speak in support of the motion before us. A decision that I've not arrived at lightly, and to me is at the core of my responsibility as a representative of the community of Albury. The large number of objections received and the wide variety of issues raised in the submissions highlighted many important points and showed a high level of engagement. I also note that the proposal garnered a number of submissions in support of the project. The report presented to us as councillors provides a summary of the issues raised in the submissions. Each issue is commented on by staff and gives a professional comment on how the raised issues sit within the context of the planning framework. This commentary is supported by attached documents, including Statement of Heritage Impact, Asset and Environment Impacts, a Basic Certificate, Environmental Noise Assessment Report, Waste Minimisation and Management Plan, Traffic Impact Assessments, Safe Design Report, Groundwater Monitoring Event and Updated Human Risk Assessment Report, Development Application Assessment Report. Having no formal training in the planning environment, I have read and absorbed as much of the provided information as I can, looking, or more aptly put, searching for a reason not to support the application before council this evening. The reason that I'm supporting this motion is that I cannot find a point or reason to deny the applicant the opportunity to develop the property. The impact on those that have invested emotional energy, the resource of scant time, and mobilising those that share the same or similar views. I know that this is not what you want to hear, and for that, I apologise. The professional planning staff and the large number of professionally prepared reports leaves me in no position to object. I would urge my fellow councillors to support this position and vote in the affirmative on the motion.
Thank you, councillor Betteridge. Question, councillor Bowen.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor King, to the relevant member of staff. Just wanted to ask in regards to Art Deco, just the year, if that were just the year period, if that's okay, where that.
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. In regards to Art Deco, it started in the 1920s at the Chicago School of Architecture. It didn't like a lot of things. It took a few years to become more popular here. If anyone's been over to Napier in New Zealand, there was an earthquake there in the late 20s, and that was reconstructed in Art Deco in the early 30s. And they had Hastings just inland, which was redone in Spanish Mission. But the general period for Art Deco architecture is considered that mid-20s, early mid-20s to the early to mid-30s.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christie. Speaker against, councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. This development does not comply with Part 10 of the Albury Development Control Plan. The building does not have adequate setbacks, does not create reasonable amenity for the occupants without causing unreasonable impacts on the amenity of neighbours, does not contribute positively to the character of the locality, and is not compatible with the streetscape. A previous Land and Environment Court decision considered the term compatibility to mean capable of existing together in harmony, and that it is generally accepted that buildings can exist together in harmony without having the same density, scale, or appearance, though as the difference in these attributes increases, harmony is harder to achieve. However, this development will not achieve such harmony with the surrounding streetscape due to the large difference in its scale and appearance. This development does not comply with the objectives of the principal development standards of the Albury Local Environment Plan. The height of the building does not complement the streetscape or the historic character of the area, or protect the amenity of neighbouring properties in terms of visual bulk, access to sunlight and privacy. The development does not meet the heritage conservation objectives of the Albury LEP in relation to the conservation of heritage items and conservation areas, including specifically views. While the assessment report acknowledges the loss of the iconic and scenic views of the Monument Hill, it has not been considered in the Statement of Environmental Effects or in the Statement of Heritage Impact, despite it being listed as a heritage item in Schedule 5 of the Albury LEP. The council report states that it is widely recognised that a view cannot be owned. However, several Land and Environment Court decisions have established principles with regard to both private and public views, such as Rose Bay Marina Limited, v Wallara Council in 2013, and Tenacity Consulting v Warringah Council in 2004. Both of these decisions recognise the high value of iconic views. By not taking into account the public submission regarding the impact on the views to Monument Hill, council has not undertaken a proper assessment as required by section 4.15 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The proposed enclosed ground floor car park precludes the ability to provide high levels of streetscape activation. Council has advised the applicant that an underground basement car park and ground level apartments would be preferable to achieve this. The applicant is adamant that a basement car park is not feasible due to cost and land contamination. However, both the 2009 and 2014 Coffey reports concluded that the contaminants were not considered to present a risk to occupants in a dwelling or within a single level underground basement. So that just leaves cost or a loss of profit as the applicant's only reason for not including a basement car park. A basement car park would allow the overall height to be reduced. Rather than having minimal setbacks, the level 1 balconies could become ground level front yards, creating real setbacks and landscaped areas more in keeping with the character of the area, as well as reducing the impact on the views of Monument Hill. The assessment report claims that the effect of the development on privacy is mitigated by the undevelopable area created by easements and the battle axe of neighbouring lots. This is an irrelevant consideration. These areas have constraints but are not undevelopable. For example, sewer lines can be built over in some circumstances, the lots may be combined at a future time, and the battle axe no longer required, and the open space may be used as such. The report also notes that the adjacent owners have provided letters of support for the development in relation to overlooking. This is also irrelevant, misleading, and not an assessment based on planning factors. It implies that the overlooking issues are more acceptable. It is not established that those owners live in those properties, and even if they do, subsequent owners or occupiers may not be as comfortable with the degree of overlooking. In summary, while Albury does need more and higher density residential development, we also need development that's in harmony with its setting. This is not a suitable development for the site. This development is constrained by the applicant's unwillingness to invest in a basement car park, such that the impacts of height and reduced setbacks cannot or will not be mitigated sufficiently, despite it being technically possible. This development would also set a height precedent for other development. The appearance of the development is not in harmony with the buildings around it or the character of the area. A few curved balconies does not a late Art Deco or ocean liner building make. In addition, the Art Deco and interwar homes from which the development supposedly takes inspiration are under threat of being disconnected from the iconic and historic view of the Monument Hill, under whose gaze they were originally constructed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Speaker against, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor King. I would firstly like to say that it is entirely appropriate that this development application will be determined by councillors, all of whom have recently been elected by the people of Albury. I have deliberately refrained from caucusing with fellow councillors on this particular subject, as to me, it seems like a choice between retaining the historic nature and character of residential development in this precinct zoned general residential, or taking a sizable step towards change. The recommendation by our planning officers embraces change in this particular DA, and now it is up to council to determine if we are ready for change of this magnitude. If this development application was for this design and scale plan, but located 200 or 300 metres to the southeast, then I would not be experiencing the uneasiness for the proposal that I've had since I first became aware of this quite a few months ago. I think that existing residents residing near the proposed development, whether long-termers or recent arrivals, would have the reasonable expectation that a project of this bulk and scale would not be in the offing. The building would be imposing at 22.5 metres and 6 stories high and dominate the streetscape. And in my view, it is significantly inconsistent with the existing and future character of the adjoining heritage area and surrounds. Although my next point is unrelated to this development, it has, however, been part of my consideration. It relates to a number of potential higher density multi-storey projects that either have come before council or are likely to in the near future. 3 locations that spring to mind are the corner of Olive and Hume Street on the northeast side, Swift Street between the Myer car park and Arnold's Lane, and the now vacant ex-service station site on the corner of Dean and Creek Street. My point is that there is not and won't be a shortage of this style of development, and there is obviously demand, but it is incumbent on this council to ensure they are built in appropriate locations. So I cannot support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Speaker against, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to pay tribute to Councillor Edwards, who very succinctly and in a very articulate fashion said everything that I wanted to say, leaving me little enough work to do tonight. Look, added substance. I do want to point out though that, and Councillor Edwards did touch on this point. Albury does need more high density accommodation. Homelessness and rental pressure in Albury is at a terrible peak at the moment. I'm not sure though that, and while it may seem contradictory to say, this is a pretty high quality development like the Hamilton project, which I supported. And I don't think that these sort of developments, unfortunately, are going to remove the burden of homelessness and the burden of rental pressure immediately on those people who are suffering the effects of that in Albury. Those people need lower cost options. Nevertheless, I'm loath generally to vote against anything that provides more housing in Albury. And I've got a history of voting that way. It's easy to see from the record, particularly in Thurgoona, supporting development and supporting developers who are providing homes. However, in this case, as has been amply covered by other councillors very well, to try and say that this development is in tune with the surrounding community and the surrounding prevailing architectural designs is just a bridge too far for me, I'm afraid, and I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Cameron. Speaker against, councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd also like to reiterate what councillor Baker has said, and also the previous councillors who have voted against this development. I'd like to first of all, though, congratulate the developer on what I believe is an excellent design. I'd like to encourage the developer to continue to invest in Albury, because I feel that the building is just in the wrong location for its bulk and scale in its current form. One note, we've got another proposal before us later on tonight, and I've just taken apart from that regarding it's a statement from the draft Albury Retail Action Plan for 2022. It says that improved connectivity to South Albury will assist in increasing density. This is also supported through the notion that the variable quality of dwellings in South Albury favour redevelopment at scale, whereas instances of late 19th and early 20th century, which would include Art Deco style housing to the immediate north of the city or the CBD, is a character asset for the city, which should be retained. So in that case, I've lost a lot of sleep over this, and it graves me to not be able to support this in its current form.
Thank you, councillor Bowen. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to close debate?
Yes, thank you. And through you to close debate. In contrast to one of my fellow councillors speaking previously about the style of housing and that it's probably not the right style of housing, that we need to deal with our shortcomings of low-cost housing in Albury. My conflicting view to that is that we need all sorts and types and scale of housing in our community. There is a shortage of housing across the board, and all additional housing will assist with providing further housing, and therefore the filtering down of various styles of housing to be made available to all. It is my opinion, and it's an opinion only, but it's my opinion that the buildings directly to the west, the north and the south of this building are in keeping with the proposed development. And I believe, in my opinion, that this development is proposed for in an appropriate site. I believe that the corner site is an ideal location for this proposed development. Neighbours do have a right to raise their concerns with development applications. They absolutely do. And it's the responsibility of council staff to liaise and negotiate, and ultimately for the responsibility of council to make the determination in a number of those applications, with a number of those applications. But I also know that the developer, the owner of this site, also has rights. And I believe that this development is appropriate in this location, so close to the main street of Albury. And I believe that we should be approving this development tonight, and I will vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Glacken. In that case, we will put the motion. This is in division. Councillors, those for: councillor Glacken, councillor Betteridge, councillor Callaghan. Those against: Councillor Thurley, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Bowen, Councillor King, Councillor Cameron and Councillor Baker. The motion is lost. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley, we'd like to hear your amended motion, the motion that you foreshadowed.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that one, council receives the consensus report, and two, refuse the development application 10.2021.38929.1, proposing a 6-storey residential flat building on the subject site described as lot 23 DP 1251747 557 Thurgoona Street, Albury, for the following reasons. A, the development is inconsistent with the objectives and controls of SEP 65 and the apartment design guidelines, specifically context and neighbourhood character, built form and scale, and visual privacy, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(a)(1) of the Environmental Planning Assessment Act 1979. B, the development is inconsistent with the objectives and controls of Albury Development Control Plan 2010, being compatibility with the streetscape and impacts upon amenity, as well as setbacks and building height, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(a)(3) of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. C, the design of the development will have an unacceptable impact on the streetscape and locality and is inappropriate in bulk and scale, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(b) of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. D, the overall bulk and scale of the development is considered significantly inconsistent with the existing and future character of the adjoining heritage area and surrounds, and therefore is contrary to the provisions of section 415(1)(d) of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Cameron.
I'd like to second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I won't have too much more to say. Councillors Edwards and Baker have made very eloquent and detailed contributions to this debate and clearly set out the issues which form the basis for me moving this motion. I note that it has been said that our council staff are the planning experts and they have written a report. But as we have been told as councillors, there are many subjective elements in planning, not the law is quite clear, but there are many subjective parts. And when we talk about bulk and scale and character, we're not talking about exact science, we're talking about something that is subjective. So there are subjective elements here, apart from those areas that I've mentioned with regard to SEP 65 and our DCP, which have strict rules and factors around them. But Councillor Edwards in particular very competently set out the reasons why this development should have been rejected, and Councillor Baker, I noted, added to those. So this is why I've moved the motion, and I encourage my councillors to vote in favour of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Any speakers for or against? Councillor Thurley, are you happy to put the motion? Those for: Councillor Thurley, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Bowen, Councillor King, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Baker. Those against: Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Bettridge and Councillor Glackett. Therefore, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 13.2, remediation, construct and fit out, pump house, amenities and boiler room, contract number 21-02252. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council accepts the tender from Monarch Buildings Solutions Proprietary Limited for contract number 20-02252, remediation, construct and fit out pump house, amenities and boiler room for the lump sum amount of $2,978,910, including GST. And B, approves the necessary adjustments to the 2022-23 capital works program to accommodate the delivery of the pump house project.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King, and thank you, Councillor Glacken. I'd like to second that motion.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion at all?
Now that I've repaired my mask and got it back on.
I know, sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Yes, this is an opportunity that came before council in the term of the last council. It's an historic building in its own right and does require significant work. It's an opportunity for us to save an old building that has heritage significance to us, but also repurpose that for a part of our community that often needs assistance with accommodation, and that is indeed for an arts and craft type background. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to do a number of things with what is really quite a fabulous building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Glacken. Councillor Bowen, speaking for.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor King, and to also speak a little bit, add more from Councillor Glacken's motion and words there too. Just the rendered pictures of this project look absolutely fantastic, and looking forward to seeing a space opened up due to the creative economy strategy that was adopted in 2017. Before my time, and having a space for the creative of our region is going to be a pretty exciting project.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Glacken, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, thank you, if I may. The pandemic has had a particular impact on our community in various ways. And one of those ways was that the more creative components of our community were not able to necessarily undertake the work that they do normally on a regular basis. They weren't able to exhibit, sell, often they weren't able to create. And this is an opportunity for us to make good some of the lost time for some of these people, and also a significant part of our community who are very creative and just need that assistance. So it's a fabulous location for that to happen, but also it enables us to ensure that we maintain that or remediate that building and then offer us an opportunity to maintain it at a better standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Happy to put the motion now. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM 13.3, Albury Waste Management Centre mattress and soft furnishing processing contract number 21/025551. Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that council accept the tender from WM Waste Management Services for contract 21/02551 for the collection and recycling of mattresses and soft furnishes from the Albury Waste Management Centre for a 2-year period commencing 1 October 2022, with an estimated cost over this period of $975,190, including GST.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Betteridge, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, just shortly, just quickly. Thank you very
Yep.
much. Very exciting to see the number of mattresses and soft furnishings that's being recycled through our community. I think that shows that the hard waste campaign is working and our uptake is good. The other heartening thing that I've found inside the report and that I'm looking forward to is when at some stage into the future, we can locally undertake the collection and recycle of mattresses when we upgrade the shredder mentioned, when it has some attachments, etc. I think that would be great because it would reduce the road miles in the recycling and hopefully reduce the cost to the ratepayers of Albury. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Betteridge. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor King, and thank you, Councillor Betteridge, for those. And to add to that, if I may ask the relevant member of staff, the shredder that council received in late 2020 through some of the grant funding that we've got on site at the moment to work through, how long is it estimated that we'll need and able to be able to shred our own mattresses and soft furnishings approximately?
Mr. Millett. Oh. We'll just double check the microphone for you. Yep.
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor King. Look, the contract duration that we've see within this the report is a 2-year contract with 1-year extensions. And so what we're looking at doing is investigating the requirements of doing that on site ourselves. And so I'd be happy that that 2-year period, we should have a better handle on being able to present that ourselves.
And so for, yes, please. Thank you through you, Mayor King, as well. So just to follow up on that, so it's going forward with a option with a 2-year plan with the option of 2 2-year plans or single-year plans.
So it's
Single year going forward for options.
Yeah, through you, Mayor King, and thank you for the question. So it's a 2-year contract with 2 1-year extension options. And so basically we'll investigate during that 2-year period to see if we can set up a system where we can process them on site. There's flexibility within that contract as well, that if we're ready earlier, because it's just a collection process, that we can actually bring it forward too. So there's flexibility with the contract to actually do it within that 2-year period if we're ready, or do it after that period.
And just to follow, and so no penalty would ensure if we were to bring that contract earlier or cease that contract earlier.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Bettridge, do you wish to close debate at all?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to note and congratulate the staff on doing the contract with the flexibility in the contract with no penalty for an early exit. I think that was very smart and well done. And in that, I would like to close debate. Thank you.
Terrific. We'll put the motion, councillors. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM 13.4, revised financial assistance policy. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move an alternative motion.
All right, we'll get that up on the screen.
Thank you. I move that Council A endorse the revised financial assistance policy with the following amendment. 5.2.1, how the initiative links to the outcomes and goals in Albury's community strategic plan towards Albury 2050 and Council's adopted strategic plans, including supporting diversity and inclusion in our community. And B, endorse council officers undertaking a full review of the financial assistance policy for presentation to council prior to 1 July 2023.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I have to second that excellent motion, Madam King.
Thank you.
Mayor King,
Councillor.
I should say. Excuse me.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thank you, Mayor King. This motion is largely administrative. However, the amended motion will ensure that the upcoming round of grant funding applicants are able to be able to be given the opportunity to clearly articulate how their projects align with Albury 2050, particularly around diversity and inclusion, which is so important for our community to thrive.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Any speakers for or against, or questions, councillors? Councillor Edwards, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you.
Thank you. In that case, we'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item CM 13.5, Airport Advisory Committee, Terms of Reference and Governance Review Implementation Plan. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the council endorse the revised Albury Airport Advisory Committee Terms of Reference and Governance Review Implementation Plan.
Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Second that.
Happy to second that. Councillor Bowen, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I don't wish to speak to the motion. Thank you.
Any speakers for or against, councillors? Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Just to highlight a couple of aspects. The Airport Advisory Committee has been functioning for a number of years now and has gone through a number of iterations. This is a review of the actual terms of reference. It's an opportunity for people who are users and including the airlines to be able to work with Albury City Council to ensure that we get the best options and product out at the airport, which means it's a better opportunity for our community to be able to have a greater number of flights, a greater number of facilities and services. The facility is owned by Albury City, and as you will have noted in the report has recommended that continue. For those of you who are not aware, not all regional airports are owned or managed by the local government areas within which they are located. The advantage of having the airport as part of Albury City's portfolio means that we can ensure the best possible outcomes for our community and also very significantly our regional community. One of the biggest aspects about, or biggest aspects to the airport at Albury is that it has an enormous reach to a very, very much wider community and services. For example, the aircraft that fly in during the fire seasons, we assist them as Albury City. We also have the flying ambulance, and many of the councillors will be aware that we have a number of flights daily from the air ambulance. So it's a significant component to us functioning as a strong regional centre. And so this report highlights the benefit of retaining this as part of Albury City, but it then also shows how we can further enhance the airport committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Bowen, happy to put the motion, or would you like to close debate?
Exactly what Councillor Glacken said. Thank you. And happy to put the motion.
Thank you, councillors. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Item 13.6, Draft Albury Retail Action Plan. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move another alternative motion.
Do we have that up yet? Is that the one? Yep.
Thank you. I move that council endorse the Albury Retail Action Plan 2022 to 2026 for public exhibition for 28 days, following which the action plan will be resubmitted to council for consideration.
Seconder for that motion, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I second the motion.
Councillor Edwards, do you wish to start debate? Speak to the motion.
Yes, please. This plan has some great actions for the Albury CBD. I'm really pleased to see the plan prioritise advocacy for improved connectivity and frequency of public transport in order to reduce car travel. It's also great to see the plan prioritise people over cars with a reconfiguring of on-street parking in the city centre to increase levels of walking and increase foot traffic for businesses. It's important to note that the improved walkability doesn't need to come at the cost of disability access, and that a balance can be struck to ensure that adequate access for all abilities is maintained. The plan also calls for council to explore ways to improve pedestrian safety and comfort on Dean Street by reducing the speed and volume of traffic. So I'm really interested to hear about what our community has to say on this, particularly the idea of pedestrianising some of Dean Street to help meet the plan's key objective of improved walkability. It's no secret that Thurgoona needs attention in this space, and the plan demands that council turn our attention to Thurgoona to plan and cater for the rapidly expanding population. Anyone who's been to Thurgoona Woolies at 5:30 on a Thursday night knows why. It's so important that we lock in plans for future retail in Thurgoona and undertake appropriate rezoning to support it upon finalisation of the Thurgoona-Willinga Structure Plan Review. Lavington hasn't been forgotten. The plan includes some exciting initiatives to revitalise the retail experience in Lavington, including a trial conversion of the Griffith Street car park into a green space with pop-up retailers in order to support walkability outside of Lavie Square. Many Lavington residents I've spoken to over the last 18 months have told me how lovely it would be for Lavington to have a central green space. I'm glad to see the plan identify the importance of improving pedestrian comfort and safer traffic movements in Mate Street through consideration of a reduced number of lanes, additional landscaping, and further seeding to activate the area. This approach isn't dissimilar to the one taken in Wodonga along High Street, which in my opinion has really improved the High Street retail experience. However, I have some concerns about the direction for the East Albury Industrial Precinct for large format retail or bulky goods. The draft retail action plan as presented provides support for the development of no more than 4 hectares of large format retail or bulky goods on a site south of the Riverina Highway opposite the entrance to the Albury Airport. This site was identified in the 2012 East Albury Industrial Precinct Master Plan. However, that master plan did not consider the natural and cultural values of the area. Mungabarina Reserve, which shares a boundary with the master plan's overall subject land, was declared an Aboriginal place in 2016 under the National Parks and Wildlife Act as an area that is significant to Wiradjuri and other First Nations people for its cultural values. The area identified in the 2012 master plan for bulky goods also lies immediately west of the 8 Mile Creek, just before it flows into the Murray River. 8 Mile Creek is an important waterway for the biodiversity of our city, and it isn't clear if the subject land has been assessed for potential habitat for endangered species like Sloan's froglet. This area also represents the first impression for visitors to our city and our region as they step off the plane and emerge from the Albury Airport. Currently, the view is to the Murray River. I wonder if it's wise to intentionally plan for such a visually intrusive development at one of the key gateways to our city, potentially at the expense of natural and cultural values. In addition, the supply is currently meeting demand for bulky goods, and demand for physical space is expected to reduce in coming years. The suitability of this site for bulky goods in retail and other future uses should be reconsidered in a full review of the East Albury Industrial Precinct Master Plan, which could also identify other potential suitable sites for bulky goods in our city to meet projected demand. So I look forward to hearing what the community thinks about this issue. And the intent of this amendment is to ensure that the plan can come back to council for further consideration of this and other issues before being adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Speaker for Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I'm speaking for the motion this evening. I'm also curious to know what the community feel about having large format retail bulky goods on the southern side of the Riverina. I've made suggestions previously that the parcels of land along the river should be reviewed in regards to zoning. And when I refer to it, it's just not sections of the river, it's the full length of the Murray. I think it's timely that that happens and should be considered in the East Albury Industrial Precinct Master Plan, which is due to be reviewed. The community should also consider the impact on 8 Mile Creek, as suggested, Mungabarina Reserve, the Murray River, and the way we want to welcome visitors to Albury and the airport and visitors welcoming to Albury. And I hope people speak to this when they have their say. Does the community want large format retail in such close proximity to natural resources as a welcome to our community? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Bettridge.
Thank you, through you, Mayor King. Just to follow on the same vein as the 2 previous speakers, I look forward to the community feedback on what is a very extensive plan. And, you know, I sort of touch on some of these key points, and I think to myself, I read a reduction in on-street parking in the city centre. And I think to myself immediately, we've removed a number of car parks for what I think fantastic pods, and we're going to further reduce this if we follow that. I'll be really interested to see what the feedback through the chambers and the store owners is, because I think it'll be fairly strong. But again, I may be speaking for a very, very small minority, but I'll be very interested to see what the view of the community is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bettridge. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. I know this is, we're putting this out for public feedback, but can I ask through you to the most relevant member of staff, please, with reference to Mate Street and the consideration for reducing the Mate Street precinct down to 1 lane, not 2 ways, both ways, noting it is the alternative route for the highway. How have our staff, with reference to traffic and the RTA, assessed this thus far, noting that it's a draft plan?
Mr. Glass.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. The assessment was based on traffic numbers, and I think you'll see in the report when it references the former Hume High, albeit south of Albury, and the southern part of Albury, it references 7,500 cars is typically the target for a single lane. If it's anything below 7,500 cars, it can accommodate per day a single lane. I'd have to take your question on notice regarding the amount of traffic on Mate Street.
But that's generally a target number.
That's good.
Follow up?
Yes, and a question in
addition?
addition to that, with specific reference to the fact that it is in reality our plan B for the freeway on occasion. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. I'm sure you'll take that on notice and get back to us on that. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Edwards, do you wish to close debate? Happy to put the motion then. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. CM14, officers' reports for noting. There are none. CM15, delegates' reports for noting. There are none. CM16, notice of urgent business. There is none. CM17, confidential matters. There are none. Therefore, I can declare the meeting closed at 7:36.